How could I have known that moment would change my life completely? It was just an ordinary day until I walked into that room. When I noticed the door was slightly open, something inside me shifted. Within seconds, I could have turned back, ignored it. But I didn't, because in that moment, when I realized what I was looking at, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. And yes, I was the one at fault here, because I was the one who started it and the one who didn't stop it. Michael was at work, the house was quiet, but I heard faint noises coming from upstairs. Noah was in his room. At first, I didn't think much of it, just another moment of a young man lost in his own world. But maybe he'd like a coffee, a little conversation might be nice. As I walked up the stairs, I tried to figure out where the sounds were coming from. When I got closer to his room, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. I took a breath, about to call out to him, but then my eyes landed on Noah. He was sitting on his bed, his laptop on his lap, the bright screen casting a glow on his face. His hands were moving, and at first I thought he was just watching something exciting, maybe an action movie. But as I took one more step, changing my angle, I felt my blood drain from my face. That was the moment I realized exactly what Noah was doing. My eyes caught the reflection on the screen and a cold wave washed over me. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't wanted to see this. Noah scrambled, trying to compose himself, frantically lowering the volume on his laptop. But it was too late. The moment had already happened. When our eyes met, his face turned bright red, the shame in his expression undeniable. I'm sorry, he stammered, looking away. I felt frozen in place. The door? I started, but I had no idea what I was even trying to say. A strange warmth spread through me. I was embarrassed, yes, but my mind was also racing with thoughts I couldn't quite grasp. I quickly stepped out of the room, my heart pounding against my chest. Pressing my hands to my face, I tried to steady my breath. What the hell was that? I whispered to myself. What had I just done? Why had I been so careless? But was I the only one at fault here? Stop it, Anna, I told myself sternly. But the chaos inside me, it was triggered by more than just what I had seen. Noah was 24 now. He wasn't a kid anymore, but I was also 48, a woman who had experienced her fair share of shame in life. I had never been in a situation like this before, but I knew exactly what shame felt like. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart still racing. I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to pull myself together. Then Noah appeared at the doorway. He adjusted the collar of his shirt, cleared his throat, and kept his eyes averted. Anna, I'm sorry. I thought I had closed the door, he said, his voice unsure but sincere. I quickly shook my head, looking away. No. Actually, I should be the one apologizing. I should have knocked before coming in, I said hurriedly, not really knowing what else to say. Silence. But this wasn't just any silence. We had lived in the same house for years, but this was the first time we had ever looked at each other like this. The first time there was this kind of tension between us. I should head downstairs and start preparing something for dinner, I said quickly, turning toward the stairs. My voice was trembling, but I was trying to hold it together. The air in the house felt different after that moment, heavier somehow. As I moved around the kitchen, chopping vegetables and stirring the pot, I could still feel the remnants of what had just happened lingering in my chest. I told myself to push it away, to forget, but my mind wouldn't let it go. Noah didn't come downstairs right away, and when he finally did, he avoided my eyes, his expression unreadable. I forced a smile, acting like everything was normal, but we both knew it wasn't. The meal was quiet, too quiet. The usual chatter, the casual banter, it was missing. Noah was hesitant, barely touching his food, and I could hardly focus on eating at all. It wasn't just awkwardness, it was something else, something neither of us wanted to acknowledge. After dinner, Noah excused himself, mumbling something about needing to finish a project. I nodded, pretending not to notice how quickly he disappeared upstairs. The moment he was gone, I let out a long breath, pressing my fingers against my temples. "What's wrong with me?" I muttered. I needed to move past this, to forget, to act like it never happened. But deep down, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. Ryan didn't say anything. He just followed me with his eyes, as if he were trying to piece something together in his mind. Before the big thing started happening between Ryan and me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, and listen to this story until the end. I promise you, everything is about to get really exciting. Until that evening, we didn't say a word to each other. No texts, no eye contact, not even small talk. But that silence, it whispered that things would never be the same again. At dinner, we sat at the same table, but we couldn't look at each other. The only sound was the clinking of silverware against our plates. We needed to talk, to ease the tension. We both knew it, but how? That night passed, then the next day, and the one after that. Everything seemed normal, but nothing really was. Our silence only made the invisible tension between us grow even stronger. And then, one afternoon, Ryan sat down next to me. I could see the hesitation in his eyes, but it was clear he wanted to fix things. "Lena, about the other day, I'm really embarrassed. I'm sorry. I didn't want things to be this way. Please, I don't want this to ruin things between us," he said, his voice nervous but sincere. I took a deep breath. No matter how strange and unexpected this was, I needed to put him at ease. I smiled, shrugged slightly, and said, "Oh, Ryan, believe me, I've had my fair share of embarrassing moments over the years." Then I shared a few of those moments with him. His smile relaxed a little and he nodded, his embarrassment fading slightly. At that moment, it seemed like the tension between us had lifted. But deep down, I knew nothing had truly passed. Even though everything seemed to be getting better, that conversation had completely erased the boundaries between us. I could feel it. Things were about to go much, much further. Ryan let out a small chuckle, lowering his gaze to the table. "I guess we're even now," he said quietly. I frowned slightly and turned to him. "What do you mean?" I asked, curiosity creeping into my voice. For a second, his expression shifted, like he had just realized he had said something he couldn't take back. He rubbed the back of his neck, hesitating for a moment, but he had already started, and now he had no choice but to continue. He took a deep breath, then looked away as he muttered, "I've seen you the same way. You just didn't know about it." It felt like electricity had shot through my body. I froze for a moment. "What?" I whispered, the weight of his words pressing down on me. Ryan's face was flushed, but he kept going. I never told you because I was too embarrassed, but I never forgot about it. Actually, it was my little secret, something I couldn't get out of my head. My heart pounded wildly, a strange warmth spreading through me. That foreign sensation, that undeniable shift. I knew something had changed. Ryan's words weren't just a confession. They shattered every last boundary between us. I looked at him. He was looking at me, too. And by now, we both knew this wasn't just an ordinary conversation. The air in the room had thickened. Everything had shifted. From that day on, everything changed. There had always been a distance between us before, an invisible boundary that kept us apart. But now it felt like that boundary had completely vanished. Without even realizing it, I had started spending so much more time with Ryan. Small moments, seemingly insignificant conversations, each one only fueled the tension between us. Now we even sat and watched movies together. Before, we had always kept our distance, but now there was an unspoken pull between us. Something we both felt, but never acknowledged. Sometimes, when Ryan rested his arm on the couch, when my hand brushed against his leg, or when our laughter intertwined, I felt something strange inside me, but I tried not to think about it. One night, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning, but the restlessness inside me wouldn't let me be. There was only one thing on my mind, Ryan. This couldn't go on. I needed to set a boundary. If he had feelings for me, I had to say it outright and put a stop to it. With that thought, I got out of bed. My heart was pounding like crazy, but my feet had already taken me to Ryan's room. His door was slightly open, and the dim light inside faintly illuminated the space. As I stepped inside, I saw him. He was sleeping, but at that moment my eyes weren't on him. They were fixed on something else, something big. My breath caught and my body froze. Seeing him like that sent a storm raging inside me. I shouldn't have seen it. I should have turned around immediately, but I didn't. I stood there for a few seconds trying to understand what I was feeling. Then I quickly pulled back. There was something inside me that I couldn't suppress, but I had to ignore it. I returned to my room and lay down, but nothing was the same anymore. That night, I had no idea how much more complicated things would become. No matter what I did, I couldn't resist this growing closeness with Ryan. With each passing day, the boundaries blurred even more, and the pull between us only got stronger. I didn't even realize when things had gone this far, but the one thing I knew was that turning back was becoming impossible. And then Ryan came home like that, drunk. The noise from the door, the things he knocked over, he could have woken Michael, but I knew how hard it was for him to wake up. So I quickly stepped out of my room and went to Ryan. I didn't even have time to properly fix my clothes before I was standing right next to him. Ryan's eyes were slightly unfocused, and a faint smile played on his lips. "Lena, are you real?" he mumbled, his words slurred from the alcohol but still sincere. I took a deep breath and grabbed his arm. "Ryan, come on. You can't go upstairs like this. We have to be quiet." But Ryan's eyes were locked onto my face. He smiled softly, his gaze slowly traveling over me. "You know, you're really beautiful. Have you always been this way, or did I just never notice?" I froze for a second, but then quickly pulled myself together. "Ryan, that's enough. Come to the kitchen. I'll make you some coffee." I slowly led him to the kitchen, trying to sober him up a little, but because of Ryan's gaze and the things he was saying, something inside me was also unraveling. Ryan sat down on a chair while I prepared the coffee, but suddenly the cup slipped from his hands and spilled onto the counter. "Ah, Ryan, you need to be more careful," I whispered quickly, trying to clean up the mess. But Ryan just smiled softly. "Were you always this sweet?" I hurriedly cleaned up the kitchen. We couldn't stay here any longer. Michael was sleeping upstairs, but with Ryan in this state, he couldn't afford to make any more noise. "All right, we're going upstairs, but be quiet," I warned, slipping my arm around his and guiding him toward the stairs. When we got to his room, his movements were even more unsteady. He needed to change his clothes, but he was too out of it to do it on his own. At first, I wanted to turn around, but when I saw him struggling to take off his shirt, I instinctively helped him. As my fingers reached for the buttons of his shirt, Ryan's breathing slowed. At that moment, the tension between us filled the air, and the silence only made it more intense. I knew exactly what I was doing, yet at the same time, I had no idea. Ryan was looking at me differently, and this was one of those moments. One of the moments we could never take back. Ryan hesitated while changing his clothes, letting his hands fall to his sides and locking eyes with me. That was when I realized my breathing had quickened. It was so quiet, the air in the room felt heavy, making it difficult to even breathe. "I'm not playing this game anymore, Lena," he said, his voice soft at first, but filled with certainty. I stared at him without blinking, my heart pounding. But what was Ryan trying to say? "Are you?" he added, his voice deepening slightly. "We both caught each other once, and that's it? You don't think about it at all? I know it crosses your mind before you sleep." A shiver ran through me, making me take a small step back, but my feet felt glued to the floor. "Ryan, this isn't right," I said, but my voice trembled. Ryan smiled slightly, but it wasn't an innocent smile. "We passed the point of deciding what's right a long time ago, Lena. Stop lying to yourself." Then he took a step forward and another. He was so close now that I could feel his breath against my skin. He reached up, his fingers trailing gently over my cheek. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't, because deep down I knew he was right. And then Ryan's lips met mine. All the silence, all the tension, the answer to everything was hidden in that moment. The thoughts echoing in my mind suddenly quieted, all my doubts fading into whispers. Because I hadn't resisted Ryan, and the truth was, I had never wanted to. My hands were trembling, but I didn't pull away. When I saw the determination in Ryan's eyes, I knew there was nothing left to hide. I swallowed, took a deep breath, and slowly slid the straps of my clothing off my shoulders. "You're right, Ryan," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. "Let's not play this game any longer." Closing the distance between us completely, I lay back on the bed. My heart was pounding in my chest, but turning back was no longer an option. Ryan slowly leaned over me. He looked into my eyes for a moment, then smiled. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "Everything is right." I looked away, a shiver running through me. Even if I couldn't admit it to myself, I knew how long I had been waiting for this moment. But still, I couldn't stop the words from slipping out of my mouth. "Ryan, I'm a little scared," I said, my breathing uneven, "because of a few big things." Ryan smiled and ignored what I said, as if he liked it, maybe because he was drunk. He leaned quietly to my ear and whispered, "Michael mustn't wake up." I knew what he meant, that there had to be silence. I didn't know how I felt, something huge inside me stirring, and I had to stop myself from making a loud noise. Ryan looked at me and murmured, "I know. Lena, everything is great, and so are you." What did he know? I think he guessed. He understood me. I couldn't help myself. I closed my eyes, gripping the sheets tightly as my body trembled. I covered my mouth with my hand, desperate to stifle any sound. Ryan was so drunk, oblivious to everything, and yet even this affected me deeply. The rush of the moment, the overwhelming sensation, the sheer weight of it all. I was completely consumed. Ryan was breathless, his body flushed. "Lena, you're red. We have to hurry." "Okay," he murmured, but he didn't stop. He kept going, more and more. I shuddered again, every part of me surrendering. At that point, nothing else mattered. I wasn't even myself anymore. I closed my eyes. "Whatever you want, Ryan. Whatever you want." He must have liked hearing that because he let himself go completely, and it was too much. The heat inside me was unbearable. Quickly, I laid Ryan down in his bed, covering him up before locking his bedroom door. I needed a quiet shower. I needed to breathe, to collect myself, to wash away the remnants of what had just happened. But no amount of water could rinse away the thoughts racing through my mind. What had I done? What had just happened? As I stood under the warm spray, I tried to make sense of it all. The nervous energy still lingered, yet oddly a strange calm settled over me. I couldn't even be mad at myself. My body felt just as relaxed as my mind. I dressed in silence, walked to my bed, and lay down as if nothing had happened. But deep down, I knew the truth. This wasn't just a fleeting moment of excitement, a reckless indulgence. No, nothing was ever that simple. And this wasn't going to stay simple either. It didn't stop here. It couldn't. Bigger things happened, more intense things. And in the end, Michael was going to find out everything. This story isn't over yet. Make sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Turn on notifications and leave a comment. It helps you stay one step ahead. Your support means everything, and if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Some moments in life feel completely ordinary at first. Only later do we realize they were the moments when everything changed. Samuel, at 58 years old, was a kind-hearted man who always looked out for the people he loved. When he invited his nephew Ryan to stay at our home, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. I still remember the serious look on Samuel's face as he said to me, "Lena, Ryan is a sensitive young man. He has trouble sleeping at night. Please take care of him, all right? He needs to be in the right frame of mind before starting university." I had no way of knowing that the long-awaited call about the new house would finally come, or that Samuel would leave for 3 days to check it out, leaving me alone with Ryan. At 22, Ryan was no longer a boy. His tall frame, broad shoulders, and quiet confidence made that clear. But to Samuel, he was still just his little nephew. As for me, I had always felt a strange warmth around Ryan, a subtle excitement I tried to ignore. No matter how much I pushed it away, there was always something about our interactions. And now, the thought of being alone with him for 3 days both thrilled and unsettled me. As Samuel climbed into the car, he turned back one last time. 3 days will fly by, he assured me. But little did I know, those 3 days would turn my world upside down. Ryan walked over, adjusting the strap of his bag. When our eyes met, he gave me that familiar, mischievous yet sincere smile. "Looks like it's just the two of us now," he said, his voice relaxed but carrying an unshakable depth. A strange excitement flickered through me. Ryan had matured, grown into himself, but being alone with him, this was something different entirely. I couldn't have predicted what would happen that night, but one thing was certain: I would never forget it. That was the moment when everything truly began. The morning light filtered into the quiet house as I busied myself in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. It felt peaceful but strange without Samuel's presence. The silence didn't last long. I heard footsteps on the stairs, signaling that Ryan was awake. He appeared in the doorway wearing a simple t-shirt, his hair slightly tousled. The sight of him was effortlessly striking. "Good morning, Lena," he greeted, his voice carrying a soft warmth. His eyes met mine directly, and a faint smile played on his lips. "It smells amazing in here. What are you making?" Before I could respond, he walked closer, placing a light hand on my waist as he leaned in slightly. "Smells delicious," he added, his tone playful but undeniably genuine. The unexpected touch startled me, though not in an unpleasant way. It felt strangely natural. "Just a simple breakfast," I said, steadying my voice. "Do you want some?" "I'll eat whatever you make," he said, his gaze subtly lingering on me. As we sat down at the table, the space between us felt smaller than usual. Ryan spoke in his usual easygoing manner, but there was something different in the air. Then, out of nowhere, he said it. "You know, Lena, you're incredibly beautiful for your age." His words were so direct, so unexpected, that I set my fork down, unable to mask my surprise. I looked at him, searching for any hint of teasing, but his eyes held nothing but sincerity. And in that moment, I knew these 3 days would be anything but ordinary. "I mean, really, you're the most striking person around, Uncle Samuel." "You shouldn't say things like that," I said, laughing softly, though I could feel my face flush. "Thank you, but you're exaggerating a little." "I'm not exaggerating," he said, his eyes scanning me slowly. "If I were in my uncle's place, I wouldn't leave you alone for even a second." I was at a loss for words, desperate to change the subject. Standing up quickly, I began gathering the empty plates. Ryan leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving me. He watched my every small movement with an intensity that made my heart race. "We should celebrate," he said, suddenly breaking the silence. Uncle told me you're buying the house. It would be a shame not to celebrate that. It's not finalized yet, I replied, a small, involuntary smile tugging at my lips. But sure, we can celebrate. Let's do something tonight, just the two of us, he suggested. You should dress up, wear something nice. We'll take pictures and send them to Uncle. We'll tell him don't come back until you've bought the house. We've already started celebrating.